All right, we are live. Happy early St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Spirited. My name is Sam Nash Green. I am a scribe of spirits. I am the scribe of spirits. I am at scribe of spirits on Instagram and Facebook. I am joined today by my brother from another country, another coast, a dear friend, a gentleman whom I can't stand in the least. No, I'm kidding. Someone whom I have bore my soul to, actually. I don't do this with a lot of people. I'm kind of a closed, quiet person, but I bore my soul to this man the last time I saw him in person, actually. God, can you believe it was the last time we saw each other?
Was that around New York Whiskey Festival time?
Yeah, December 2019.
Yep. It's been a while.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bushmills and the Sexton in Proper 12, National Brand Ambassador Jack Ferris, hailing from the north coast of Ireland, Northern Ireland. Jack, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Sam. Absolute pleasure. Obviously, we are in the last-minute countdown for St. Patrick's Day to happen. So
the most Irish time of year, I like to call it.
Yep. So we are.
Our friend Tom says hello. He says /wave. Hey, Tom, welcome to the channel.
But yeah, we're in the absolute countdown of the madness being in the Irish world of spirits and alcohol. So it's, yeah, there's a lot going on.
On the topic of Irish alcohol, it's been a long time since I've had one of these, so I'm going to do this right now. Because it is St. Patrick's Day tomorrow, for those of us here in America, it's probably already St. Patrick's Day for many people in other parts of the world. I have not had a Guinness in probably about a year. So I'm going to pour this real quick and let it settle. Let that settle. And we'll just leave this just right over here. Now, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, you can already see it starting to do it. Because of the way the Guinness is brewed, it's a heavier stout. And Jack may be able to talk to us a little bit as well. You want to let it settle down. So you want to let it go from that, kind of chocolatey nut brown to almost black.
Yeah, no, one of the best things about talking about an Irish stout is the fact that for those who wait, good things come. And this is the thing.
It's almost ready already, Jack.
Well, that's one of the nice things about having those cans. You've got the widget inside there.
Yeah, the nitrous widget.
So you did actually pour it the correct way with a can, which is pretty much you just go the whole way in. So that's the best way to pour it, because that widget actually does do the entire process that pretty much you'd find at a bar when you're waiting for the pint to get poured, with the pint having to come out in pretty much 2, if not 3 stages.
Yeah. Pour, let it settle, pour the rest, let that settle, pour the very last bit, then bring it to the guest.
Yeah. And then also my advice for anyone having stout, if they're out at an Irish bar, look around. If you see a lot of stout getting poured, that's the time to get it. If you're not seeing a lot of stout getting poured, maybe stick for maybe a lighter beer. Because, the Irish stouts, if they're not getting poured regularly, sometimes you get a little bit stale in the line. Sometimes you might get it poured incorrectly. So my advice is always, if you look around the bar, you see a lot of stout, that's the time to get it.
I think this is the best pour of Guinness I've ever made, and I'm about to have a sip because I just can't wait any longer, Jack.
Don't worry. Sláinte.
Sláinte more. Oh, I miss Guinness. I'm technically still on my diet, but it's a special day today, so.
Yeah, and it is one of the least calorific beers as well. lot of people don't realize this. Yes, it's heavy, but in terms of calories, it's actually one of the least.
There are 125 calories, 9.4 carbs in here.
So it's not terrible. Not terrible.
So, we have 8 whiskeys to go through, Jack. 5 of which pictured here. We have the original, the Red Bush, the Black Bush, the 10-year single malt, and of course the Sexton. And then I have some very special whiskeys that we'll get to a little bit later on. So, obviously you want to start with the classic, the white label original Bushmills. So why don't you tell us, Jack, a little bit about Bushmills and the history of Bushmills? And my biggest question, and it's just something that bothers me. You guys claim to be the original distillery. Are you claiming to be Ireland's original distillery or like the original whiskey distillery, the first whiskey distillery? Because I know that whiskey was brought over with Roman Catholic monks to Ireland from, Rome and, to an extent, probably Greece a little bit. But it wasn't whiskey at that point. It was more like Brunevin or burnt wine. And then they brought it over to Ireland and started doing it with what they had, what it was around potatoes or malt, and made poitín. And they started, the age of poitín, and that kind of resulted in whiskey.
Yeah. So look, you are absolutely correct with what you're saying. So the first written recipe for whiskey was from the Red Book of Ossory, I believe, written in 1324. Now that is the very first recipe for whiskey ever documented. Now, obviously, what was considered whiskey back then is not what we consider whiskey today. So whiskey is,
I don't think we'd even
obviously evolved
be able to palate it now.
Yeah.
What they used to drink, yeah.
So it'd be very, very different. But yes, we are the world's oldest licensed whiskey distillery. And what we mean by that
now,
is...
on that, go ahead, please.
Oh, yeah. So on the 20th of April, 1608, King James I granted us a license to distill. Now, that was the first attempt to get us to pay taxes, but that license was granted to the area that we still occupy today. And the reason that we can still claim that is the fact that Bushmills Whiskey Distillery is in the village of Bushmills. So it is a shared area. Bushmills today is still only 1,100 people, still a tiny village. And for that area, the name Bushmills comes from our water source, the River Bush. And the first industry that was there on the banks of the River Bush were the mills that milled the barley. Bush Mills stands for where we are and what we do. And on the bottom of every single bottle, you can see proudly embossed on the bottom is 1608. So we will be celebrating our 413th birthday on the 20th of April. So 1 month after St. Patrick's Day is when we will be celebrating that.
Now,
So
I've
we
heard some
can't-
controversy, Jack, about the 1608.
Mhm.
I've heard that it was, not licensed as a distillery, or it was licensed, but it was just a farm. There was no operation going on at that point in time yet. It wasn't a whiskey distillery. I've heard from you, of course, as the oldest licensed distillery, and I've heard from other sources, and I don't have any names to name. I don't even remember who mentioned it. That, well, yes,
I have a
Bushmills. It wasn't Donald. It was not Donald. It wasn't Donald. That Bushmills was not operating yet. That it was, just a farm or something at that point.
Yeah, so at that stage, we know there's at least 5 distilleries within the very area of Bushmills itself. But again, why and how we can claim it is the fact it is for Bushmills. Bushmills is an area, it's a village, it's a place, it's a people. Bushmills only became a limited company back in 1784. But we do know that the distillery was fully operational and full existence, the distillery that we still call Bushmills today, back in 1743. There was a guy called Alfred Barnett who writ in one of his publications the fact that the distillery was there in the hands of the smugglers. But we do also know in the very site we still occupy today, the very first mention of aqua vitae, Latin for the water of life, which of course, water of life in Irish is Ishkabaha, which is where we get the word whiskey from. But we do know the first mention on the very site we still occupy today was in 1276. Now that puts us even ahead of the Red Book of Ossory, where that mentions a very specific recipe. But in 1276, we do have a reference down to the fact that the local aqua vitae was used to fortify the troops prior to battle. So we know distillation has been taking place on the very site we still occupy for well over 800 years, because this is already an established industry back in 1276. So yes, we can.
That's fascinating.
Claim it. Because again, Bushmills, yes, we are a limited company right now as a direct limited company from 1784, but Bushmills, it is not just a distillery, it is a village, it is a people. So whenever we say Bushmills, we mean Bushmills. We mean Bushmills as its entire entity. Bushmills is the village, Bushmills is the people, Bushmills is the people that still work in our distillery, that are come down from all the generations. And it's one of the most beautiful things.
Just to be clear here, Jack, when you say Bushmills 1608, the license for the land since 1608, you're not specifically talking about this Bushmills distillery, this whiskey, this single malt whiskey, you know, these 4 SKUs. You're not specifically talking about the limited company. You're referring to Bushmills as, you know, in a more broad sense of there's been a license to distill in the village of Bushmills since 1608.
To a certain extent, yes. To a certain extent. Because we do know that the key distillery, before we actually became a limited company, that is where our roots do lay. And that is why the license was granted. The license was granted in a way to get us to pay tax. Now, it was only whenever we became a limited company in 1784 that we actually did start paying tax. So it took us, 170 odd years to actually start paying that tax. But the recognition that we got for that first license highlights the fact that the quality of whiskey being produced in the very area that we still occupy today was of such a significance that it was deemed by King James I that he had to grant us a license. So it is a very unusual thing, but of course you're getting a very Irish answer. An Irish answer is never a straightforward one.
Oh my God. That has been you for the last 3 or 4 months trying to nail down a date. Oh yeah, we'll do it. No worries. Oh yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. We're good. No, we're good. Yeah, absolutely. And if I was to be like, Jack, do you want the day before St. Patrick's Day to do a live with me? You're like, oh yeah, absolutely. I'm taking that. I'm like, all right, good. I knew if I offered you March 16th, you could not say no.
Yeah, no, we're a very interesting type of people. Very interesting type.
Let's get into the whiskey, shall we?
Oh yeah, no, definitely. So probably of course,
he's like, oh yeah, that's a thing here. We're not just chatting.
So pour it, and look. In the meantime, I'm going to give a little bit more background about Bushmills. So obviously we talked about the history there, but more important, there's 3 things I always like to cover. It's the history, it's the geography, and it's the quality. Because a lot of people don't realize exactly where Bushmills is. So Bushmills is on the very north coast of Ireland. So we are 56 miles north of Belfast. And Belfast itself is about 120 miles north of Dublin. So we're only 1 mile from the North Atlantic Ocean. In fact, where we are closest to is Scotland. At the closest point, it's only 17 miles to Scotland. And the closest part of Scotland that we are to is Islay, one of the most notorious whiskey production regions in the world. And that gives you an idea of why we produce what we do. So we produce triple distilled single malt. And what that simply means that we distill 3 times. And the reason we emphasize the triple distillation is that it's 1 more than most scotches and 1 more than most bourbons. Of course, there's an exception to every rule. You don't have to be triple distilled to be Irish, but it is a very distinctive nuance, essentially, for Irish whiskey. Then, on top of that, with being on the very north coast of Ireland, that triple distillation, that single malt, we use 100% Irish malted barley. Now, we do not smoke the barley. There is no smokiness. There is no peatiness, which, again, we emphasize because the closest part of Scotland we are to, Islay, is most renowned for their prettiness, for their smokiness. And, of course, within Scotland, there's different regions, different regional effects. But again, for us, all you'll get with Bushmills, it is pure malt and it's triple distillation. And that triple distillation is why you'll always find with Irish whiskey, it's described as being smooth. Because that additional distillation... Yeah.
So a couple of things. One, Isla, not Islay. Like, Moolah. Isla, not Islay. Another one you mentioned is that the regionality of Scotch. And, the Scotch whiskey regions, well, yes, they exist. And, obviously I don't expect you to know this, having, not working on Scotch, of course. But the Scotch whiskey regions are kind of just there, but more and more the industry and bottlers kind of are moving away from focusing on the regions. Because I can go to Islay and find a whiskey that rivals the Speyside, or I can go to the Highlands and find a whiskey that I thought was from Islay, from the Outer Hebrides. So just to jump in there and say that real quick.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Look, again, this is why I've said there's an exception to every single rule. Every single rule, there's always going to be an exception. Just whenever we look in the broader picture, on the broader side of everything, before we delve into it. I mean, it's like saying Irish whiskey isn't peated. There is a lot of peated Irish whiskeys out there. It's like saying Irish whiskey is triple distilled. Oh, there's a lot coming onto the market. And it's like saying Irish whiskey can only be triple distilled. There's a lot of double distilled coming out. And there's a lot that's going to reach this side of the Atlantic. It's just whenever we talk about the differences, we're talking in a broader spectrum. Just as a broadness, as a highlight. It's like saying, all bourbon is, produced in the same way. It's not. It's like, we've got the entire thing like with what is Tennessee whiskey compared to bourbon. So again, it's that whole thing of where whenever we talk about this, we're talking about it in a broader way. But we always have to keep in mind there is an exception to every single rule. And as brown spirits, as whiskey keeps growing and growing, these exceptions, these differences, they're going to become a lot more frequent as well. So you are also raising a good point as well.
My friend Matt, hello to Matt, by the way, in the comments, our friends over at Whiskey Crusaders, talking about peated Irish whiskey. He corrected me. There's two I know of. Well, actually, I know of three, but one of them I cannot stand one of them. He mentioned Teeling Black Pits. Yes, yep. Absolutely, Teeling Black Pits. And that's not the one I can't stand.
I think I know the one you're talking about.
I think we've talked about this before, Jack. In fact, I know we have, because I sent you and Herlihy the table sheet they had. You remember that sheet I sent you?
Yep, I remember.
Yeah, that brand.
Yeah. But again, look.
Anyway,
Irish whiskey's developing; it's growing. Remember, back in the 1980s, we only had 2 distilleries. Even up until what?
Yeah.
10 years ago, we pretty much only had 3 core distilleries. And now we're sitting over 30. Well, I believe we're at 33, and we've got another 20 planned. But again, it's going to take a long time for these distilleries. It's growing.
We find Irish whiskey in here.
Nearly every couple of weeks, we hear about another distillery planning to come online. So this is going to completely change the category.
I look at my own damn book because I don't remember that number that I put in here. This is how fucking much Irish whiskey changes. I got to look at my own book just to see what I wrote.
So at the time of your production of your book, there wasn't that many there wasn't as many Irish whiskey distilleries whenever that went to publication as there is right now. This is how fast.
Did I ever tell you that Bushmills is mentioned on page 56 in the very first paragraph? Have you finished reading this yet? You have like 1,200 copies, knowing you.
Yeah, I've got a couple of copies here. I've handed out to a few friends.
31 legal distilleries. I wrote down 31 here.
Yeah, so that just highlights. Once it goes to print, we're going to get more whiskey distilleries coming online. And again, just with the more and more interest in the industry, we're just going to keep growing further and further. So that's why it's important to kind of be aware of what the different styles of whiskey there is in Ireland.
Matt mentioned Connemara as well. Dude, Matt, Connemara is my favorite peated Irish.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, again, this highlights...
Really quickly, actually, Jack, on the topic of peated Irish, because I know we are going to talk about cask finishes. I mean, we'll get into cask when we actually start to talk about the liquid. I know we're going into history and, maturation and legality right now. Mm-hmm. And we'll get into cask finish later on our back three. But is there plans for a peated Bushmills?
No. I will also divulge that we did do experiments throughout previous ownerships. So we're talking maybe a couple of generations ago that there has been peated malt used at the Bushmills distillery. Now, it does not fit into the Bushmills portfolio, but of course, whiskey keeps innovating. Well, you can't innovate unless you experiment. But basically, Bushmills is known now for its style, and the growth of Bushmills, with Bushmills being more recognized, the fact we're just readdressing a brand that a lot of people maybe have forgotten about. Is
Emily, contrary to popular belief, I am not a robot. Hello from our friend Joe Van Dam. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Sorry, Jack, I couldn't resist.
You're grand.
And by the way, don't worry. I noticed this on a lot of people's shows. Only the host addresses the comments. Please, if you see a comment that you want to, mention and address, you have the same view I do. You can see everyone's comments.
I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should be able to see everyone's comments in the right hand. If you open up your StreamYard, if you pull it up, you should be able to see everyone's comments on the right hand side of the screen.
Yeah. Okay. See what you're saying now. Again, it's the joys of you letting me use a brand new platform. It means we get some of these interesting technical difficulties. But that's now the world that we live in. The fact that the virtual world is a new line for us. We're always used to being in person, in our whiskey festivals, taking care of mass groups of people. Now this is all virtual. So we're in a very, very different world, and we're all learning because the technology keeps changing as well.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so back to the whiskey styles. So what do you want me to talk about? The original?
Yeah.
So the original. So the original is a whiskey that has remained unchanged since 1888. The recipe has remained unchanged. Now, with this, it won the world's first gold medal for whiskey in the Paris Expo of 1889. Now, we do actually have a bottle of whiskey in our distillery from 1888. It is on display.
Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
So this whiskey, just so I'm clear, the recipe for this was created in 1888?
Yep. Recipe was created back in 1888.
But the final blend, won a medal in 1889.
Yep.
How is that possible?
So it was released.
Let me rephrase that question.
Yeah.
Was there already this distillate as mature stock that they then blended together to create the recipe in 1888?
Yes. So it's not that it was laid down in 1888 and we created whiskey. It was released as the whiskey as we see it today in 1888. Now, of course, whiskey keeps changing. Climate keeps changing. How farms are managed keeps changing. So there are differences. But we have done tests on our on-site laboratory, and it is remarkably similar. It even surprised even our master distiller just how similar that whiskey was to what we're producing today. So this is a pre-prohibition style whiskey, where its profile has remained remarkably unchanged. Of course, there are always going to be slight differences, slight different nuances, but at the core of what this whiskey is, it has remained unchanged. Now, this is a blended whiskey, and what we blend this with is a tailor-made grain spirit. Now, at the minute, that's made for us in Middleton. Now, the new Middleton distillery was already founded in the early 1970s, but this is a recipe that's taken from where I grew up in, a town called Coleraine. It's only 5 miles from Bushmills. Now, that distillery was bought in 1972. They stopped distillation in 1974, and they closed doors by 1976. But that distillery has been in operation since the mid-1800s. So that is where all the grain spirit was always sourced. So the grain spirit that we used to blend, Middleton was where the people that bought that distillery, and they have to replicate that exactly for us. So no one else has access to this grain spirit. So it is completely unique to Bushmills. Now, we use 3 different styles of grain spirit. For the original and for the red bush, that'll be the same style of grain spirit. So whenever we get the black bush, it gets a little more interesting. But again, this grain spirit, no one else has access to it. It's made solely for us, and it's using the Coleraine Whiskey Distillery recipe. So,
now, Jack, on the topic of, getting distillate from Middleton and, quote unquote sourcing, this is a very, loose segue, but our friend Joe asked is there any chance there's some sourced Bushmills in the silky Irish whiskey?
So that is something I would not be in the complete position to comment on. What I will just say is, if you have any aged Irish whiskey, we're talking more than 5 years, and it says it is a triple distilled single malt, there's only one place that could have come from, and that'll be Bushmills. So this is a big thing. Whenever you go into the liquor store and you just look at what those Irish whiskey bottles say, you can figure out the source. Pretty much there's only 3 sources. It is changed now, so that rule isn't as strict as it was. But for the most part, what we find over here in the United States of America, it's still coming from one of 3 sources. It's either going to be Middleton, Cooley, or Bushmills. Now, again, there are some distilleries that have been operating long enough that they are producing their own spirit, but maybe not in the volumes that we're starting to see it hitting the shelves in America just yet. So, again, I am open to someone saying, oh, it's not completely true. It's like, yeah, it's not completely true, but for the volume, if we're going to find it in America, and particularly in your side of America, in the West Coast, for it to get over that stage.
Actually, Joe's East Coast.
Yeah. So, well,
Joe's
again,
in Maryland.
Yeah, on the East Coast, we'll tend to find we get the Irish releases sooner and in more quantities than yourselves in the West.
Y'all have Blue Spot already, and it's not even landed in California yet.
There's some benefits, apart from the fact it's 30 degrees. It's probably colder right now. Yeah, 30 degrees right now. So
it was the high 40s last night in LA, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm driving on the freeway home from the South Bay, and I look at the temperature gauge, 46 Fahrenheit. I don't think I've ever seen LA get that cold in 28 years.
Well, that's what whiskey's
anyway, well, I was being a little good last night because I took some painkillers because I have a sore arm for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, but that's why we drink whiskey. Whiskey is.
I got my COVID shot last Saturday. I got the Johnson & Johnson jab. So one of the side effects is swelling and soreness. and I'm trying to drink as little whiskey as possible so I can take some Tylenol when I need it.
Yeah. Well, that's what this is also for as well. So we don't always have to just stick to whiskey. We always have some water.
Good idea.
But yeah, back to Bushmills Original. So again, it's a blended whiskey. So it's going to be.
Let's talk on tasting now.
So the taste.
No, go ahead and finish.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
sorry, I bounce around a lot.
Yeah. To explain the taste, we kind of have to really explain then a little bit more about its makeup. So it's going to be just slightly more single malt than grain spirit. It's then going to be matured for a minimum 5 years inside predominantly bourbon barrels. But we do use a little bit of sherry cask in here. Just a little amount. So we're talking less than 10% of this makeup is going to be matured inside sherry casks. But what you'll notice with the bourbon barrels, we get them Kelvin Cooperage in Kentucky, is we're going to use a balance of first, second, and third fill. So obviously caramel and vanilla are always going to be the biggest components of that. But the sherry cask is the reason why there's a little more of a finish, why it draws in towards the back of the palate that little bit more, why there's maybe even just a hint of the spiciness. But again, that vanilla comes out more, that honeyed sweetness around the front of the lips comes out more. And again, you'll just notice that sweetness is focused always at the front of the palate. So it's why we always recommend it for an Irish coffee.
I thought you were going to make some of those today, Jack.
I was, but we're in Irish whiskey Super Bowl season of where my time is gone. But yeah, Bushmills Original, the best way we always enjoy it was what we'd always recommend for an Irish coffee. And the reason why, that's single malt in there will give it a lot more body, a lot more character. So that means whenever you have that perfect Irish coffee, those perfect ratios, that you're going to notice that whiskey taste in there. Sometimes other whiskies, particularly other Irish whiskies, which people probably try to prefer or go to more, they're going to get lost. They don't have the characteristics that make that flavor shine through, because that vanilla, that honey, that little bit of caramel, that even hint of spice, that's going to complement that cream on the top of the Irish coffee. And I mean cream, not cream from a can. You don't find that in Ireland. It's going to be heavy cream, just shaken up, made a little bit thicker, and we just layer it on so it looks like a baby Guinness.
I was looking at my Guinness, and I was looking at the head on the Guinness, and I'm like, yeah, that looks right. It reminds me of an Irish coffee.
Yeah.
If you guys have been following the channel for a while, you'll know in December I did 30 days of whiskey cocktails, and I made an Irish coffee with the Bushmills Black Bush. And I texted Jack that there is almost no better feeling than getting the head on Irish coffee perfect.
Yeah, you put it in a very, very beautiful, poetic way.
I don't even remember it. I don't even know if I have the text anymore.
We can find it afterwards. But no, you said it in a perfect way. Whenever you make that perfect Irish coffee for the first time, and it also surprises you how easy it is to make. And like a lot of people put off making Irish coffee. Probably the main reason is the fact that they're actually making it wrong. The hardest way to make an Irish coffee is the incorrect way. The easiest way to make it is the correct way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it was when you do that tasting with me at the bar in Beverly Hills that we were serving everyone Irish coffees, and my coworkers were useless. Kitchen wouldn't help with the cream. We had the coffee all ready to go with the sugar already in it, so we needed the whiskey and the cream. But those didn't come out anywhere near as good, especially if we didn't have Irish coffee glasses. I mean, again, I didn't at that time either, but in the December video, you've watched it, right, Jack?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It just came out really, really class.
Yeah. Like, this is the glass we always recommend. And it is something you can find in a lot of liquor stores now. You'll find this easier and easier. So it's a 6-ounce Georgian glass. And with that, you get your perfect ratios. One of the best things about this as well, particularly if you have anyone here working inside a bar, is the fact that's 6 ounces. You're going to drink that and you are going to want another one. So you've doubled your profit.
So on to the flavors of the classic, the original.
Yeah. So what you'll even notice that, like, now that you've taken time with it, is the fact, particularly in the nose, you're going to recognize the distillate. So distillate is going to be very floral. We're going to get those very distinctive ripe fruits. We're going to get it's peaches, it's pears, it's red apple, it's almost pear drops, and it's almost very buttery as well. So you are going to recognize.
With you.
Yeah. So you are going to recognize that very distinctive influence coming in.
No, again, Jack. I do not agree. I'm getting different. I'm getting a lot more caramel, a lot more green apple. So it's more of that tart, more crisp.
Yep.
Honey, some malt influence. I do get a little touch of that raw, fresh malt distillate, but it's very subtle.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it's subtle. Like, we're running out their Bushmills originals. Whenever we get into our 10-year, that's when we really get the core of what Bushmills really stands for as well. So, again, it's a hint. I mean, normally, whenever we do these tastings, we will have new make spirit there. So you can always realize, okay, why is there floral sweetness there? Well, that's the reason why.
Jack, why don't I have new make?
Blended whiskey. Pardon?
Why don't I have new make?
Oh, because we that's not something you can really bring into the United States.
Oh, Jack.
And when we can travel again, things will change.
Let's move on to the Red Bush.
Perfect. So, yes, Red Bush, very different style. So Red Bush is going to be, again, a blended whiskey, but it's going to be predominantly grain whiskey. Now, the big thing about this is the fact it's going to be first fill bourbon barrels. Now, first fill bourbon barrels, for what you'd really look at Irish whiskey, is not something you find too often, because that first fill bourbon barrel is going to have a very distinctive bourbon influence, which is not necessarily what the Irish palate is designed for. So this is actually an Irish whiskey designed solely for the American whiskey drinker, for the bourbon drinker. So with it being only first fill bourbon barrels, this is also why it's got the name Red Bush, because we're going to get a much more of a reddish hue from a first fill bourbon barrel. If you imagine every time we use a barrel, that influence of color, flavor, aroma is going to be less and less. So we typically use barrels no more than 3 times. So again, the original is a balance. So that's why the original, being an older whiskey, is actually lighter in color. The Red Bush, the reason it's darker in color is the fact we're going to be using predominantly first fill bourbon barrels. Well, sorry, solely first fill bourbon barrels. And that is why suddenly the sweetness is dramatically increased. Significantly increased.
Again, no. It's completely the opposite. The spice is turned up to 11 on this one. The sweetness was very prominent in the original, but I find with the Red Bush, it's a lot more baking spice.
Mm-hmm. And again, whiskey's individual. Very, very individual. So whenever we do these tasting notes, I only like to give guidelines, because our interpretation of every single whiskey, it will be different. It'll be different because of the temperatures we're in. It'll be different in the time zone we're in. It'll be different in what we've ate before. It'll be different for so many different reasons.
So there's a conversation going on in the comments, Jack, independent of us. They're not paying attention to us anymore. They're talking amongst themselves. And Matt's trying to get some silky from Joe. And Emily said that Matt has more than most whiskey bars, but he runs on the Pokemon theory of gotta catch them all in terms of whiskey.
Well, the Irish whiskey category is exploding. Exploding.
Not just Irish. No, Jack, he wants everything. If it's whiskey, he wants it. But yeah, as to what you're saying, whiskey absolutely is subjective. And, of course, your palate is different than mine. You drink this more than I do. Mm-hmm. I drink a lot more heavy, proof-wise, whiskeys. I drink a lot more 50% plus whiskeys.
Yeah.
So I do have a little bit of palate fatigue, a little touch of burnout, of course.
Yeah.
But there's nothing stopping me from enjoying a good glass of Bushmills.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Like one of the whiskeys I love most, if we're going to stick in the blended category, and I'm in a warmer climate, it's actually going to be the Red Bush, because I do just tend to find it is a little bit lighter. It's not as rich and heavy. You still get all those sweetnesses, but we're going to notice it's a little bit drier. So there's not so much of a distinctive finish. It'll actually dissipate out of the palate fairly quick. And given a hotter, warmer climate, I tend to find that is something I would always, want to go into more and more. Now, one of the best things I would always recommend for the Red Bush is an unconventional style of whiskey, because we are using those first fill bourbon barrels. We are reaching out to the bourbon category, not necessarily just the Irish whiskey drinker. Is the fact I would then, with it being an unconventional whiskey, let's do an unconventional cocktail. So there's a cocktail in Ireland known as the Daisy. And Daisy in Spanish is margarita. So since we are 24 hours from St. Patrick's Day, well, actually less, we're only yeah. But
I mean,
I would recommend.
It's just under 8 hours for West Coasters.
And it's, just over 4 hours for me. So it's already St. Patrick's. Yeah, it's already St. Patrick's Day in Ireland.
Yes. So Daisy category of cocktail. On that note, real quick, Jack. Mm-hmm. Daisy is a family of cocktails for everyone watching who's not familiar with them. And falling under the Daisies is the margarita, is the daiquiri. I want to say even a Cameron's Kick falls under a Daisy.
Yeah, it's a collection, but we've got that style. The fact it's going to be significantly citrus forward. Of the fact that, again, it's something fantastic to challenge your bartender with. Particularly if they've got very rich lime juice. If that's done in a certain ratio, we could end up with, after shaking, green juice, white foam, and if we garnish that rim of the glass, let's say cinnamon or red chili salt, we've got green, white, and orange. We've got an Irish tricolour. So again, being an unconventional whiskey, I always like to push an unconventional style of cocktail.
Absolutely. I'm a little surprised, and by the way, a big thank you to Bushmills. I'm not sure if some of you guys saw my Instagram post, but they gave me a giant swag drop yesterday in advance of this, including this dope little flag I have up behind me. This is not CGI. This is actually here. And also they provided everything but the sexton. They provided these 4 bottles and the 3 we're going to taste on the back half. So a big thank you to them for that as well. What was my point? Fuck.
Well, what was it on the fact that an unconventional whiskey, unconventional cocktail works together?
No, it wasn't that. That's marketing, and I don't really give a crap about marketing. Jack, I probably should explain to everyone watching. When I said that Jack is like my brother from another coast, I was not kidding. Like, I give this man so much shit, and he just turns around and flips it right back at me. So I am being a little less professional than I usually am, because Jack is one of my favorite people, especially who works in whiskey, and just one of my favorite people in general. So all the shit, all the, mudslinging that's coming from me, I'm going to get it back in kind probably over the next few years or few months, because he's got to be professional. I don't have to be as professional as him.
We've just had a lot of PR training. We've had a lot of, obviously, with the amount of virtual content we're having to put out, been trained very,
what
very.
Did I say? So focusing less on the, the backstory so much and more on the core components of the whiskeys here, because we have the backstory. Wow, 45 minutes in already, and we're only on whiskey number 2. This is gonna be a fun night.
I know. We're gonna have to. We're gonna have to those next 3 whiskeys probably pick up the tempo, and then your final 3 whiskeys after that definitely pick up the tempo as well.
So on the red bush, like I was saying, I get a lot more of those baking spices, a lot more cinnamon, and a little bit of clove. I don't get that sweetness as much as I did on the original.
Yeah.
Now, on the back of the bottles, you guys can't see it, and if I try to show you, it'd be a waste of time. It says aged for a minimum of 3 years. Now, everyone knows that Irish whiskey has to be aged for a minimum of 3 years. But not a lot of people know that it's technically 3 years and a day.
So that is a thing very much up for debate. We're not really sure who put this out because the Irish Whiskey Technical File that you can find easily, that does literally just say only 3 days. So 3 days,
3 years.
3 years and a day. It's definitely something we do believe is being perpetrated a lot by Irish whiskey distillery tour guides. Of where, obviously, we're a big source for American tourism.
You are one of.
Yes, very, very much so.
Jack used to be a tour guide for the Bushmills Distillery in Ireland before he was the national brand ambassador for America.
Amongst many, many other jobs I did in that distillery, but yes. But yeah, it's the 3 years and a day. There's nothing legal about that. There's nothing written in the Irish Whiskey Technical File about that. It's definitely what we can all roughly trace its roots down to is Irish Whiskey Distillery tour guides is really where we can all pretty much agree that's where it's sourced from.
I was told by an Irish whiskey ambassador that it was 3 years and a day, and they, in the same breath, jokingly said that it's because they wanted to age it longer than Scotland's minimum.
Yeah, which is, obviously we hate the Scots with a deep, deep passion, but it's a brotherly hatred. So we don't allow anyone else to insult them, but we do really not like them. I mean, obviously in the nice days of summer, a few times when the North Atlantic and the Irish Sea would be calm enough, we would get Scottish whiskey distilleries taking a boat and coming over to us in Bushmills. So we'd have the entire distillery team pretty much coming over, well, at least the majority of the distillery team coming into our distillery, coming down to our bar, and a battle would commence. Not physical, but verbal, definitely. But
it'd be a fly on the wall for that.
Oh no, it's definitely one of the things I'll always miss about the distillery. Is interactions like that.
One of my favorite interactions between people, my friend Michael Carr, and Michael Carr. For those of you who don't know Michael Carr, he was the former global for Powers. He met my friend Rob McCackey, who is one of the business development managers for the Lionsbridge Education Trust. Me and Michael were at a bar, and Rob came to join me, and Michael was still there, but they got along swimmingly. Now, you must understand, Rob's a Brit. And there was no blood lost. I'm not making this up, right? Like, Brits and Irish don't always get on?
There's definitely a little bit of history there. Probably most politically, probably the most politically correct way I can say it. So yes, Blackbush. Blackbush is going to be a very significant change.
Jack, your PR team is going to hate me tomorrow.
Don't worry, it'll be grand. Look, it's grand. We're all within St. Patrick's Day. So, Blackbush. Blackbush is an 8-year-old whiskey. It is going to be 80% single malt.
So
And then
actually, backtracking real quick. So Black Bush is 8 years old, but it says on the back of it, age minimum of 3 years.
Oh, legally,
How
we have
old?
to
Right. No, obviously legally a minimum of 3 years, but I'm not. But I'll get to this in a second in terms of age on the Black Bush. My question is, what are the ages on the original and the Red Bush, and why don't they state them on any of these three?
Yeah. So the original is 5 years. The Red Bush is 4 years. And the Black is 8. The reason we have to do this is it's for the United States, of where, if with it being a blended whiskey, we have to mention, okay, it's minimum 3 years. Until we can guarantee all product in there is a minimum of 8 years, a minimum of everything, we cannot put this. And you'll find this in every other Irish whiskey. It's a blend. It's all going to say
every other whiskey in general. If the youngest whiskey in the blend is not, for instance, 3 years, you can't call it a 3 year.
Yeah. So it's one of these big legal things. But whenever we say it's 8 years, it is 8 years. So it's the Black Bush, what we call rule.
By the way, sorry, I should probably point out Emily giving me shit. She's like, I can track 6 conversations, thank you, and love Bushmills. And then Matt did say that my swag is awesome. And coming back to your idea of chili salt, Irish Daisy, Emily said all things improved by chili salt.
Yeah. It's like, if you enjoy margaritas, why not have essentially an Irish style margarita when we come to tomorrow? When we come over this entire St. Patrick's Day week, which is being spread across 2 different weekends. So yeah, Black Bush.
Let's take a quick break from the whiskey, Jack, actually. This is the second year in a row that St. Patrick's Day is different than what, obviously one would expect. Last year was completely canceled, obviously, because we had just gone into lockdown, 2 days before. It was the first of the COVID lockdowns. And this year, while things are reopened, most places aren't out at 100% yet. Obviously, I know for you that, California and the West Coast as well as the East Coast are more target markets. So with you not being able to travel, a lot of virtual content, obviously, a lot of virtual trainings. But, as an Irishman in America, well, first of all, actually, let's go back even further. What is the history of St. Patrick's Day? Because everyone always talks about, it's a drinking holiday. St. Padraig, or Padraig. St. Padraig. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
St. Padraig. Everyone always talks about it as a drinking holiday. But at least as far as I'm concerned, no one really knows what the history is. Everyone drinks green beers. They have what used to be called Irish car bombs. They're now being rebranded cleverly as Irish drop shots, I believe you called them.
Yep. So yeah.
Obviously, car bomb is in reference to the IRA, and that is just that's not.
No, that's definitely not going down that road. No, but okay. So the history of St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day, really, how we view it is actually an American thing. One of the first St. Patrick's Day was, I believe, in around New York, and really one of the big things. If you've ever been to an Irish wake, an Irish wake is pretty much a 3-day mourning process before you bury someone after someone passes. And what we tend to do is, what that means that we all come together, family members who haven't seen each other in years, suddenly come together and we all share a drink. And with that, we all share stories. And with that, the more stories we share, the more laughter we share. And so what's always happened with any Irish holiday, so coming from those wake moments that go back thousands of years, with tying that into an Irish wedding, which again, a similar process happens. When it came to St. Patrick's Day, with it being a little more Americanized, we've always drunk on St. Patrick's Day, but we did it in a very, very different. It's always much more of a religious process. But with the growth and with the amount of Irish emigrating across every single part of the world, not just the United States of America, we went everywhere. Is again, we spread that celebration of a day, of a moment, into what we now see St. Patrick's Day as. St. Patrick's Day has evolved so much radically over the last 150 years that it doesn't really stand for what it used to. But at the same time, we are still celebrating our land. We are still celebrating St. Patrick himself. And we are still celebrating that same thing that a wake does. It brings us together. We see friends that we haven't seen in ages. Like for the fact that me and you are talking on a podcast right now. It's bringing us together. And that's the whole point of St. Patrick's Day. Whenever you come together, you're going to have a drink. And having a drink, those stories come out more and more. So St. Patrick's Day, as we see it today, has been an evolvement. But its core ethos and its Irish ethos still stand. Obviously, it has been radically changed in the last maybe 20 years over here, where everything's become plastic and everything is green, where we're just like, what? But at the same time, the whole point of St. Patrick's Day.
One of the biggest things that, I've learned and I've tried to instill in my friends and colleagues about St. Patrick's Day, well, two of the biggest things. First of all, is St. Padraig. I always say Padraig, but it's St. Padraig, as in Paddy. So double D, not double T.
Yeah. No.
And two, no green beer.
Yeah. There's no green beer in Ireland. There's good beer. That's it. We don't do green beer. This is what I mean. Over the last 20 years, everything has went green. Where it's like, okay, we get the green to a certain extent, but not the full extent. And then, the first time I ever
had
our
friend Michael Pollard, by the way, he said, clearly I'm not adjusted to daylight savings. I'm an hour late. Michael, you're in plenty of time. We still have 6 whiskeys to go.
It's going to be a whiskey.
And I've got a whole can of Guinness.
But, no, look, St. Patrick's Day, look, the ethos is the big thing. We all come together, and particularly more than ever now, particularly what part of the country we're in. If our regulations start to be softened a little bit more, we've now got the opportunity that we haven't seen some of our closest friends in literally a full year. And this allows us to come together. And that's the ethos of St. Patrick's Day. We come together, we celebrate a moment.
As an Irishman working on an Irish whiskey brand, how does it feel to see the commercialization of St. Patrick's Day?
It's something we just have to accept because everything's becoming commercialized. Obviously, it's core to the religion has definitely been maybe a little bit weakened, a little bit softened, but it's still there. It is still very, very much there. If you go to an Irish cathedral, you will see all the St. Patrick's Day sermons happening. So it's still very, very distinctively there. But what I do love is what I just keep coming back to is the fact what St. Patrick's Day does to everyone. It brings everyone back together that we haven't seen in months and weeks and years. I mean, the amount of times that I just see some of my best friends only once a year. But we still talk, but whenever you actually see, and you see everyone at the same time, I mean, that's that ethos that I was talking about. It's the fact.
I mean, in that ethos, we have a St. Patrick's Day every time you're in LA. Then I see you once, maybe twice a year.
But then when we do,
by that ethos, we have a little mini St. Patrick's Day. And when we do see each other, it's like, all right, where am I meeting you? Okay, cool. I'm parking my car. I'm parking my car and taking an Uber.
Yeah. So again, look, you can understand of where we do have a lot of acceptance for like how St. Patrick's is today, and as long as we just abide by that same thing of where we come together, we celebrate, we have a great time, and we share those great fantastic stories.
St. Paddy's, if you must remember, double D's, not double T's.
Yes, double D's. We're not talking about a burger patty.
Absolutely, have to. Then St. Pat with one T. But never St. Patty's. No,
that's we're talking about a burger patty in that stage.
Exactly. On to the Black Bush. You're saying this is a 8-year-old blended.
Yes. So 8-year-old blended. Again, rule of 3/8. 8 years old, 80% single malt, 80% Oloroso sherry cask, which is why it's bigger, fuller, bolder. That's why that
Now, I have a bizarre question.
Enhanced.
Why is this the first one with a cork? The original in the Red Bush are screw caps. This is a cork.
So whenever you see a screw cap whiskey, typically that's going to be consumed in a much quicker rate. Whenever you see a cork cap, you know into you're starting to go into a more premium product. And with a more premium product, you're going to take your time with it. What you'll notice with Blackbush, that sherry cask makes it so much more richer and gives it more body that you inherently will take more time with that. You're more inclined to sip on that slowly, which is why we always recommend this as a serve for Blackbush. So we're going to have a black pint. Typically that might be Guinness, might be Murphy's, might be a local stout. And we'll have Blackbush. What we also know as Irish handcuffs. Now what we tend to notice with an Irish stout is the fact that we are going to get more of those coffee notes, more of those roasted coffee notes. With Blackbush, we tend to find more like Christmas cake, fruit cake, Christmas cake, more of those dried fruits, nuts, a little bit of spice. And by taking a couple sips of that Irish stout and then taking a little sip of Blackbush, we're going to get a little bit of that dark chocolate just coming in just towards the end.
You have to give me a minute. I just poured a fresh one, so it needs to...
Yeah.
God, I'm loving the nitrous in the new Guinness cans.
So
I'm absolutely loving it.
It's all about taking your time. And then also tomorrow, if you do find yourself in a bar, it's also what we call Irish handcuffs, because both our hands are taken up.
A black and a black.
And it goes down beautifully. You have your first round, you'll happily have your second and third round.
God, just watching this beer just pour. I can't tell you, Jack, how many places I've seen pour and serve a Guinness before it was ready.
Yeah, it's unfortunately a little bit more of a West Coast thing. We tend to find that it's poured and served a lot quicker, whereas what we'll tend to find on the East Coast, well, particularly Northeast, is you will wait your solid 3 or 4, even 5 minutes from ordering a pint to actually getting that pint delivered to you.
Just finished pouring the rest of that in because I had a little bit of foam left from the last one. I only have one glass, so. So yeah. I've ordered Guinness before at a bar. A fairly well-known bar in LA on Sunset. And they poured it and just served it right to me. And even then, after it finished settling, it just wasn't right.
Yeah, and look, that goes back to my point earlier on in the show, is the fact if you're going into an Irish bar, look around what people are drinking. If you see a lot of stout, that's the time to order. If you don't. There's many other great Irish beers. Like we can have Smithwick's, we can have Harp. You know, we can have a lot of great...
I love Smithwick's. Smithwick's is my Irish beer choice over Guinness.
Yeah. So those kind of beers, they last longer in the line and they can be poured a lot fresher. An Irish stout, there's many ways to make that come out bad. Many, many, many ways. There's only just a few things you have to follow to make that.
Order Guinness, we pour it in stages. So we pour it about halfway up, let that settle, then we finish it, and then as that's settling, we serve it to the guest.
Yeah. And again, it's just look around what people are drinking. If you see a lot of stout, that's the time to order.
We go through a fair bit of Guinness. It's a popular one because my bar is owned by a Brit, and he knows good beer.
But yeah, you take a couple sips of take a couple sips of the stout, a little sip of Blackbush, and it works. It works.
They just complement each other so well. The dark soy salinity, chocolatey notes of the Guinness just really work with the Blackbush. The Blackbush kind of It's interesting how the black bush is kind of like a palate cleanser because it picks up those leftover flavors and just melds with them and kind of leaves your mouth clean from that.
Yeah. No, it works. It works. It'll work even better tomorrow.
Yes, well, tomorrow I am going to be home.
Well, again, for any of us in any states that, we do find ourselves with those restrictions lifted and people are still following the rules, go out and support your Irish bar. And, you can always get it to go as well. So
you know what? I might just do that and go call on Kearns. So,
yeah. But anyway, to keep the show moving on, shall we go into your 10 year?
Probably should. Yes, absolutely. Let's move on to the 10 year.
So,
thank you, Jack. For once, I'm not the one rushing you. Usually it's the other way around when we're hanging out. It's like, Jack, come on, let's go. Come on. Yeah, we got to go here now. Let's go here.
Hey, well, look, I've got an Irish bar that can be calling me in less than an hour. So, 10 year, a little bit of background. This is what we call a 2-wood whiskey. It's going to be 100% single malt. It's going to be matured inside bourbon barrels and sherry casks at the same time. It's a simultaneous aging side by side. It's only the time of vatting, which essentially is just prior to bottling. That is the only time those two woods meet. Now, it is going to be predominantly bourbon barrel, and it can be anywhere between 60 and 90% bourbon barrel. The reason for that variation is that whiskey keeps changing, climate keeps changing, weather keeps changing, seasons keep changing. So whiskey keeps changing itself. So to guarantee that consistency, this is the reason why we chill, filter, and bottle at 80 proof, is that we try to guarantee that consistency. That whenever you try Bushmills today, tomorrow, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it'll always taste how you remember it being. Now, of course, there is going to be a difference by that stage, but we try to balance that difference as slowly as possible. So our master blender, Helen Mulholland, the first ever female Irish whiskey blender, she's been doing the job for over 27 years now. It is her job to dictate what warehouses we pick our barrels from, what part of the warehouses we pick our barrels from, how many times that barrel has been used. So she's creating that recipe. And this is the hardest for her to get right because it's our most delicate whiskey. Now, as I was saying earlier about our distillates being light, floral, and fruity, well, this is where you really start to pick that out. Obviously, you get that maltiness unmistakable. But we'll also notice that sweetness is a little more viscous. But you also notice it is a dry whiskey, but it is such a delicate whiskey. That dryness happens without you even realizing it's happening.
First, you're absolutely right. I've never noticed it before. Maybe I don't drink enough 10 year. Usually we're drinking Black Bush when you and I are together. But yeah, no, this is definitely dry. And it's interesting because I don't usually pick that up on a whiskey. Yeah. And I might not have if you hadn't suggested it. And look, I'm not perfect as much as I try to be. Even I'm influenced by Howard's suggestion. But I really do see that dryness. It's not, like as dry as like a Sahara Desert, but at least comparing to the last three expressions, it's noticeably drier.
It's not an
noticeably more airy. No, not at all.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the big thing. It's done in a very, very delicate, even elegant way that you don't realize that flavor is just dissipated out of the back of the palate. So it's what we call a very Moorish whiskey, because there is so many of those like beautiful subtle sweetnesses at the start, and then it rolls through the back through just so easily, and then before we realize it, it's gone. But it's very, very refreshing when it dissipates. It's a whiskey that you really want to discover. And this is very much my summertime whiskey. This is a whiskey I'd always recommend for the likes of an Irish Royale.
Now, what is a Royale?
No, it's got a similarity to the Kira Royale. So it is a pre-Prohibition style cocktail, but an Irish Royale, champagne-based. Again, with the whiskey infusion. But the Irish Royale, we've definitely started seeing documents written about this even from the late 1880s. Definitely within the 1890s, we've definitely seen a lot more recognition of it. But again, this is a pre-Prohibition style cocktail. It is a champagne-based cocktail. It is a champagne-based cocktail to be built within a champagne flute. So it is very much of that more bougie, more high-end style of cocktail. It is also something I'd always associate with oysters, and particularly northeast coast oysters, or maybe northwest coast oysters. But that colder water makes them a little bit smaller. The Gulf oysters terrify me. But it is something we'd always associate to use alongside. Or if you want to be really adventurous, it's instead of adding on any of your garnishes, take a little bit of the tenure, chill it down. So we're going to cut off the vaporizing alcohol. So we're going to make it also more viscous. Then with that, we're going to enhance that honeyed note. So we just pour a little hint over a northeast coast oyster, and you'll have one of your best oysters you've ever had.
Interesting.
The 10-year is a versatile whiskey. I mean, for the price point,
I do very much enjoy a peated oyster luge with peated scotch usually.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the best thing about this is that it still allows us to discover the flavor of the oyster without it, let's say, being overpowered by peatiness or smokiness. So we almost get the best of both worlds. We can still get that whiskey infusion, that whiskey hint. We'd still discover the quality of that oyster.
Y'all down there in the chat are real quiet. Been about 20 minutes since I've heard from any of you guys. What are you, scared or something? Come on. Questions, comments, smart remarks? So if I just wanted to chat with Jack, I could just pre-record this. If I do this live for you guys too. So, sorry, you were saying, Jack?
So yeah, best place to enjoy this, summertime, outdoor, the patio, Irish Royale, or definitely think along the lines of northwest or northeast coast oysters.
Michael. Woo, Michael.
The acacia. The acacia, that's a different beast. That's a different beast. And it's a beast we only can find in the distillery itself.
I've had the acacia. I think the acacia is actually in the book. No, Michael, you didn't, because, like you said, the acacia isn't available. Yeah. Bushmills Acacia Wood, distillery exclusive, page 61. Out of the Beginner's Guide to Whiskey, Traditions, Type, and Taste of the Ultimate Spirit. If you want to purchase a signed copy of the book, you can go to the website that's scrolling across the bottom of your screen right now. On page 61, there's a chart, inexpensive, affordable, and expensive bottles. The last, but not the least, whiskey in the expensive category is the Bushmills Acacia Wood. It's expensive partly because it's just exclusive, so you gotta go to Ireland to get it. Robust in body, saltwater taffy, saline, oaky, hints of baking spice, cardamom, bitter, and a syrupy viscosity to it. Those were my notes from my time when I tasted the acacia wood in an undisclosed location with someone who may or may not be allowed to acknowledge that I tried it.
What I will just say about the acacia wood is because we're not used to acacia, I don't believe the taste notes prepare you for what you're about to discover. I believe the acacia wood really is something, because it is so different to anything else there is out there, that you really need to be there to try it. It's definitely a whiskey I would stand by the fact that taste notes might help you, but there's so much more to that whiskey that challenges everything you thought you knew. That it is so different to anything you've probably ever tried that you're not really prepared for. So it's a whiskey you just need to try if you're interested in it. Now, of course, we're going to have to wait another couple of months to try it. But yes, we do only sell it in Bushmills Whiskey Distillery. So whenever we get a chance to actually start stepping those planes again, trust me, I'm scratching the walls. I have not left this area up here in over a year. I used to travel 3 weeks out of every month. So this has been a big change for me. So I'm more than
Michael
ready.
said he's fascinated. It sounds so bonkers, speaking of the acacia wood.
It's worth the wait. It is worth
And
the wait.
then Matt said, I need the 28 year of my life. Matt, just wait till the end of the stream. We may or may not have a 28 year-esque Bushmills to discuss.
You may or may not have the baby 28.
Yeah. So Master Blender, Helen Mulholland, for Bushmills, actually, kind of gives me a great segue into our next whiskey.
Yes. So another part
which
of our
is the
team.
Sexton.
So
which
yes,
is also distilled at Bushmills, yes?
It is. So it is something we call our sister whiskey, but it is very much its own entity because it has developed its own characteristic, a very significant, very much its own characteristic. So we do share our relationship, but the Sexton is very much the Sexton. It's not, where maybe some people might feel, it's Bushmills under a different label. The way it is matured makes it very, very much its own characteristic, its own style, very much confidently saying, this is the Sexton, and it does stand out as the Sexton. So the Sexton, the person behind this, is actually a lady called Alex Thomas.
Fantastic lady, by the way. I met her in New Orleans.
Oh, you met her?
I met her.
There's like a million things going on in my brain right now. Coming up to St. Patrick's Day, we're in St. Patrick's Day Eve. My brain is not maybe in the clearest thinking format.
It's you. Your brain never is clearly thinking. I have to call you 5 times, be like, "Hey, where are you? Hey, where are you? Hey, where are you? Oh, I'm outside having a cigarette." I'm like, outside of where? Oh, the Lincoln. Yes, I met Alex Thomas, who's behind the Sexton, in New Orleans in July of 2019. Those J months. I met her at Tales of the Cocktail, and she is fantastic. And I don't know if you realize, Jack, she reshared my post about her chat today.
I did see. Did spot that. So Alex, she spent quite a number of years at the distillery looking after the entire maturation department. And Alex's knowledge of what each warehouse's characteristic is, what each time of the year she wants to receive the barrels at. So, for example, we only receive sherry casks and only during certain parts of the year because the weather, we don't want that to spoil the sherry casks. That shipping time, the weather change could actually spoil them or could actually change their influence of their characteristics. So her level of knowledge is like nothing normal. So
clearly, because Matt says Sexton changed his mind on Irish whiskey and brought him back to drinking it.
Well, the Sexton, probably just put it in context, the Sexton is something I'd always use to challenge a mid-range Scottish single malt drinker. So maybe the likes of, let's say, maybe, just for an example, Macallan 12. I'm not saying that.
Whoa there, Jack. Back up. You're telling me that you pair Sexton against something of a sherried Speyside in the 12-year-old whiskey range.
Yeah. Look,
Jesus Christ.
I'm not saying to win them, but I'm saying the palate, what they expect. And the reason for this is the fact that this is going to be predominantly first fill sherry cask. It's going to be a minimum 50% first fill sherry cask. And that means that influence we get from the sherry cask, first fill sherry casks are so distinctive and so influential that a lot of distilleries try to steer away from first fill sherry because it's so easy to get wrong. But with that, the intensity of the flavor is so distinctive. And then the fact that this is only 4 years old. So 4 years and a single malt don't normally go together. But again, we've had 413 years of expertise passed down from generation to generation. Now, with that, we're going to get that youth of the spirit. So it gives it a little more of an intensity. But again, it's our distillate. We've triple distilled it. So it's actually still very quite smooth. So that intensity of the sherry cask, which just opens up the palate instantly, straight away.
Whew, that just...
But what we're going to get is that with that intensity, we get that Irish classic Bushmills house style finish. Where it's been triple distilled. It's a very unusual effect.
Insanely creamy, Jack.
Yeah. The texture is a full single malt. That's why that texture will just coat everything. And that finish will just draw right through. You even get that starting coming in the chest where the body starts to come out more and more. Again, it's that first fill sherry cask. First fill Oloroso sherry cask. Then we get from the Antonio Payet family bodega.
I like that you tell us where you're getting the sherry casks from. A lot of producers won't tell us where they're getting their sherry casks from. Which was leads me to ask the question of, look, are you using sherry casks or are you using sherry seasoned casks?
Yeah.
There's a difference. It may sound the same, but there's a difference. Sherry casks are casks that actually held sherry to maturation until it was ready to bottle. Sherry seasoned casks are casks that were used just to add a sherry seasoning to it, where they will put sherry in there for, let's say 6 months, and then dump it out, and then use that cask for whiskey.
Yeah. It's very different. But, our relationship with the Antonio Payet family bodega is so intense, the fact we actually get sent out to southern France to select the oak trees before they've been felled. Those then felled oak trees are then sent on to the Antonio Payet family bodega, then seasoned with 11 different local Oloroso sherries for a minimum of 2 years. So it's still being used for the sherries.
11 different Olorosos.
So it's almost like making a blend. And that is used as a blend for...
I mean, you're basically, making a blend in the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
Matt is saying he's been through 3 bottles of Sexton, and he rarely finishes bottles.
It goes down phenomenally easy. One of the best things about Sexton is, well, you've got the bottle as well, is what I call almost the magpie effect. So the reason it is this shape is that it is a nod to where the whiskey comes from right up on the north coast. So again, as I mentioned, the distillery is only 1 mile from the Giant's Causeway. The Giant's Causeway is made up of over 40,000 basalt columns. And these basalt columns, they form really, and they really influence the water that we use. So the water that runs into the distillery to make the Sexton runs over the same basalt rock that we then find out at the Giant's Causeway that has formed these 40,000 hexagonal columns. And that is why the bottle is the way it is. So
Gotcha.
There's a reason behind everything. Us Irish, we love...
Joe Van Nem is asking if it's all French oak.
Majority. There can sometimes be northern Spanish oak, but again, it's all from the same region. So it's not as if we're going to southern France and northern Spain, 2 different areas. Southern Spain does meet the border southern France does meet the border of northern Spain. So it's all that region. But predominantly it is French. Predominantly.
And then Michael asked if Bushmill still has a product that is predominant or branded product that is still a lot of sherry malt.
Keep your eyes on Bushmills. Keep your eyes on Bushmills. If you've watched Bushmills how it performed globally, you'll notice that the answer to that is a very quick yes. But keep your eyes on Bushmills for the United States. There's a lot happening. There's so much happening. It's a great time to be part of this brand. We're finally unlocking the secrets that we held up in these warehouses. And we're finally bringing that to the public.
Speaking of secrets, Jack, shall we move on to secret pour number 1?
No. That's why they're secrets.
So I have 3 whiskeys that Jack does not have, which is very uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
But in 2019, there was a Bushmills single malt tour where the master distiller, Colin Megan, traveled across. Was it just the Western or was it the entire U.S., Jack?
He did 4 cities. I did 4 cities. So he did Boston, New York, San Francisco, and L.A. I did Houston, Chicago, Miami, and Austin.
You said Boston.
Oh, no, Austin.
No, Houston,
Austin,
Chicago.
Texas.
Oh, Austin.
Yeah. Sorry, it's my accent.
So I have here an 11-year-old Bushmills at 58% ABV in 100% extra bourbon casks.
Yeah.
Non-chill filtered. Look at that color. Can you guys see the color? Not really. So I'll actually grab these 3 and walk over to the camera just to show you the color on this whiskey. You guys see that? I can't see my computer from here, so I can't tell if you can see how light this is. Then we have the... Pardon, Jack?
You might want to move just maybe not as close. Yeah, we can probably get a hint of it.
Okay, well, fuck it. It's really light, okay?
Yeah. Unfortunately, in the virtual world... Yeah, no, that's one of the things in the virtual world. What we used to do in the real world doesn't translate all the time across a camera.
No, it really doesn't.
No.
So this one is very, very light. Lighter than the original. This one is fairly dark, a little bit lighter than the Black Bush, but around the same color hue of the Red Bush. And this one is actually lighter than the second one, despite it being the eldest of the 3. So, without telling you what the other 2 are, Jack, why don't you lead me through a tasting? Because I literally don't know anything about this one except for what's written here on the little vial.
So, look, you are perfect at what your taste notes are. And again, this is so what we've went through have been our standard bottlings at 80 proof and chill filtered. And already we've had maybe a little bit of a difference in what we view, what the taste notes are. So what I am going to do is give you the background of what this whiskey really is and what maybe the maturation influence is really going to influence that tasting as such. So again, we're going to keep this interactive. In fact, you're going to tell me what you get and why you get it. So what this
you can't shut me up even if you tried. You've tried and you can't get me to stop talking.
Well, what I'm just going to highlight is the fact that this is going to be something that's been asked for years from Bushmills is a non-chill filtered whiskey. And look, the reason we do chill filtration is the fact that we want to guarantee that consistency.
Whoa.
Okay, so there, you're already starting to get it. And look, before you start going in any further, remember what I said about a distillate. It's buttery. It's floral. It's going to be red apples. It's going to be pears, pear drops. Always think about that, because that multiplied by the years of maturation in a different style of wood inside the Kentucky bourbon barrels, where this is going to be used for number 3 char. So number 3 char means that vanilla is going to pop out a lot more. It means that cleanliness
Dude.
is very, very
Oh my god, I'm so glad I've waited this long to try these.
So, remember I said about the amount of times I've said to you, Sam, in all our different tastings, all our different meetings, is you keep an eye on Bushmills, because we're starting to unlock those secrets. Well, remember, that's what the
Yeah, probably. I don't
was.
listen half the time, but it sounds about right.
But
I'm like, yeah. Keep an eye. Tell me when I need to know something. You'll tell me when I need to know something. Like, come on, just shut up. Just tell me when I need to know something. Let's just stop. Because how many times have I told you when we're hanging out? Fuck work. Fuck Bush. Like, I love Bushmills. Fuck Bushmills. I'm not here to hang out with Jack Ferris from Bushmills. I'm here to hang out with my friend Jack Ferris.
So, what are the key things you're getting out of this whiskey?
Pork. Like,
I remember, Sam, when I used to work in the distillery, I used to work in disgorging as well. So whenever we empty out the barrel for the first time it's ever seen fresh air for God knows how many years, depending on what we're dealing with.
This is the first time this sample has seen fresh air since it was bottled.
Well, what we used to do, or what you could do, is, you know, obviously the whiskey goes everywhere, it splashes. Well, you can always like have that glove and just like taste, and having whiskey for the first time from a barrel at whatever strength it could be sitting at, what you can discover. And look, as long as you know the influence of what the bourbon barrel does, as long as you know what the house distillate style is, you can see how those two interact. And that's why maybe I keep going back to our distillate.
Oh.
I keep going back to what the bourbon barrel is, like what use number and what char level it is, because that thing gives
that's important. But I'm going to pause you, Jack.
Yeah,
because I want to take spotlight here for a second and focus on this whiskey. Because I get that apple, I get, you know, honeycomb. I get graham cracker too. I get the caramels and vanillas, you know.
Yeah, there's the obvious ones.
Hang on. No, Michael said that's my kind of hand sanitizer. Michael, not quite high enough proof, but yes.
As close to being overproof whiskey.
This is 116, Jack.
Yeah. So remember, we cask at 63.5% ABV. So we distill up anywhere between 83 and 85% ABV, but then we bring that back down with
hang on 1 second, Jack. Water. Oh man! Oh my God!
Do you notice how oil that hits parts of your palate that you haven't had anything else hit yet?
Dude, this is. Oh my God! The amount of just flavor in here. Like,
that's the beauty of non-chill.
This is the best Irish whiskey I've ever had.
We haven't even got to your last one.
I don't know if I want to. I can't afford the last one. I know what it turned into. I can't afford the last one.
No. Okay, the last one. Don't pour out the full sample. You're just going to pour enough. You get a hint and you get a.
I didn't for this one either. I kept a good portion so I can review it later. Oh my God, Jack. Fuck you.
We've got another 2 to go. Bye.
I don't know if I want to.
Oh, you do.
This is an 18-year-old, guys. The second sample is an 18-year-old, also non-chill filtered red jack.
And this is a red wine cask.
Yeah, bourbon and a port cask finish at 54% ABV.
Oh no, red wine, not port. That's going to be I can't say the name of the vineyard. It's going to be part of the first grow in France. So some people might be able to decipher from within there, but it's part of the first grow within the French red wine. It's pretty much as I can divulge.
Michael says this better be available to us in the future.
So
Michael, I really hope so.
So the whole point of this single malt tour that we did was to determine, we've started a new series of Bushmills called the Rare Cask. That's why we've got the 28 year. And what really we see as being received in the best format, that's what we're going to release for the next year's Rare Cask. And so every single year we're going to have some kind of format where we unleash a number of certain different styles of whiskey that don't see the light of day. And we kind of get an idea of like, what do people want? What are they interested in? And that's the whole point of this single malt tour. So one of 3 of these that Sam is about to taste did actually make it into our Rare Cask series. We worked with Flaviar this year, and that's determined our next version. And every single year we're going to do some other format where we integrate everyone to let them see just what Bushmills is capable of. And we're still not showing you our best stuff. We're still not showing you our best stuff of what we're capable of, and really what is coming out as maybe the most favorite. So, in a long way around, yes, it is going to be available, but exactly what's going to be available, that's another question. But you are going to see
Jack
Bushmills
unlocked. I need this 11 year. Please make it happen.
Have you tried the 18 year yet?
No. I'm still obsessing over the 11 year. I want to cry. It's so good.
Oh, no. Try that 18 year.
Okay, let me have a swig of water. Cleanse my palate. Lots of red apples on the nose.
Again, it's that Bushmills house style.
Cinnamon.
Just try it.
Dude, you know me by now. Fine. Whoa.
There we go.
I still like the 11 year better.
Oh, just wait. No. Wait. It's like whenever you try the Bushmills 16-year-old. It's you think it's good until you give it a little bit of time and you get the afterglow. With this, there's a very similar process happens with it. Where that red wine, it gives it a characteristic that you're just not prepared for.
There's a lot of tannicness. Tannicness? Tannins? Yeah, there's a lot of tannins in here that give it kind of a bitter, dry aspect. This kind of reminds me of a michelada. Like that, at least like the salt rim on a michelada, like the chili salt rim, the tahini rim. That's the tahini. It reminds me of a tahini rim on a michelada. It's good. The 11 year is still better.
And this is where we come down why we do the single malt tour. because everyone's palate is different. And particularly when you get such unique styles of whiskey of this, where, it's going to be single cask, it's going to be non-chill filtered, and it's going to be cask strength. So what I might maybe get more excited about, maybe you get more excited about something else. It's the thing about Bushmills. Bushmills is a discovery. And that's why I don't like going into intricate tasting details, because we can be so varied. So I always like to try and paint maybe like certain whiskeys take more time with. Maybe certain whiskeys we look for like one more style of sweetness compared to another. So we go like maybe light.
Absolutely.
It's all individual. If you have to listen to someone who tells you the exact taste and details, no. It's
nah. I mean, my viewership knows that I don't let reps talk about tasting notes, because I did it with you a little bit because I was giving you a little bit of leeway, but I don't let ambassadors or distillers talk about tasting notes for the precise reason of I don't want the influence.
Yeah.
I've probably had almost everything I'm tasting on stream. I've pretty much had everything that I'm going to be tasting on a live stream. But I do these live streams because I want to sit down and talk with the representative, with the distiller, with the ambassador, and go through it with them. And sometimes I get to try neat stuff, like these three. And it's also just good fun.
Yeah.
I will not bring a whiskey brand, at least, onto my channel if I do not at least like them. I don't have to love it, but if I do not like your product, you will not come onto this channel.
Yeah. And look, whenever it comes to these very unique products, I think it's always more important knowing what the background is, knowing why it is that it made it so special, made it so unique. And it's
By the way, Matt, are you still here?
Pardon?
I'm just asking, Matt, are you still here? Because this next one, you're going to want to pay attention to this last one. Oh, you have some, do you, Jack?
I have a bottle that I'm saving for a very special time. A very special time.
A very special time. So the third sample of our secret set is the Bushmills. It looks so tiny compared to the others. Oh no, Matt's comment. Matt, 28 year, you bastard. Yeah, Jack, you bastard. I didn't get a media sample of that. I'm not happy about that. But
I still have not seen a full bottle of it in real life.
Neither have I.
Because I'm going to highlight why this whiskey is so special to me.
But hang on one more second. So our final sample of the evening. This is the 28 year. Before was the 28 year. This is Bushmills 27 year non-chill filtered ex-bourbon cognac finish, clocking in at 53% ABV. Non-chill filtered, single malt. Matt, this is why I told you that we'd have something close to 28-year-esque at the end of the stream. Because this is 28-year before it was 28-year. Jack, the floor is yours.
So this whiskey was distilled on the 9th of April, 1992. So this is just a month and a half.
Run that by me again.
9th of April, 1992 is when this was distilled.
Okay. How much is the bottle? If I can find one at retail, how much should I be looking for?
Should be looking at about maybe 500, but being resold to certain places.
God damn it, Matt. Fuck you. I was not born yet.
Well, this was only distilled a month and a half after I was born.
Yeah,
So-
Jack, you're about the same age as me.
Yeah.
You're just slightly older. No, I was born in November of 1992.
So this spent its life maturing inside a bourbon barrel up until the 19th of December.
Joe, wait if you feel like a fucking baby, dude. Joe's like, I was already out of college.
So again, came out of a bourbon barrel on the 19th of December 2003. And what that then meant is that this has spent 17 years finishing inside cognac casks. Now, unfortunately, I cannot divulge any more information about the cognac casks. At least maybe not
Can
this
you tell
year.
us what crew it was from?
Can? Because I
Was
wasn't
it
even
Grand
told.
Champagne, Petite Champagne?
I've been on the phone with Master Blender many's a time, and it's just something that we're not willing to release yet. It is something we will release maybe in a couple of years' time, but because this is such a new style, a new variant for Bushmills, it's something that we just, unfortunately, we can tell you as much as you want about Bushmills, just not everything. There's still going to be some things that we keep to ourselves.
Well, that's not as much as I want to know, because I want to know what house this came from.
Not from me.
I want to know if it's Petite Champagne or Grand Champagne or Fine Champagne, if it's Fine Bois or Bon Bois.
Okay, have you tried it?
Not yet.
Try it. Try it, and you will forget you asked me what house that even came from. So what I will just say, to put this into perspective.
What the fuck?
Yeah. So
Jack, no, you gotta stop for a second. You need to stop for a second. I'm sorry, respectfully, but just shut up for a second. I have never, ever had a whiskey like this. This tastes like peaches, but it tastes also like those gummy peach rings with like the sugar on top of them. This is fucking insane. And 27 years, I can't imagine what it was like at 28 years. Jesus Christ. I mean, I'm not going to let you talk yet, Jack. In fact, I'm going to mute you for a second here. Just because I want to focus on the tasting notes for this. I do not want you to interrupt me while I... The nose is so sulfuric. Sulfuric and ashy. It's like if you burnt a nice piece of meat. You burnt the fat and you burnt the actual meat itself. You've got that peach note. It's kind of like that sugary peach, like syrup that you expect to see in like a Starbucks or, like a restaurant or a bar. But also like there's vanilla just all throughout. And it's not just the bourbon barrel influence. It's that cognac cask. Can't wait.
There's a lot in there. We're at the age
There
category.
really is, Jack. I unmuted you, by the way. I don't know if you realized that. I
unmuted
you.
No, look, we're at the age category of whiskey where the only way you can decipher really what's in there is time. Like we're going to be offline long after this, and you're still going to be discovering different notes. I'm just going to maybe put this into perspective. I'm not a person to talk about, notes, ratings, whatever that we get, maybe awards. I'm not a big person to really talk about that too much. But something
Let
maybe...
me just say this right now. If you mention Jim Murray, I'm ending the stream.
No. So I think it's Wine Enthusiast.
Okay.
They have only scored 2 other spirits in their history at 98 points. One was Don Hoyle, 1842.
I gotta ask.
One was Elijah Craig, 18-year.
So why 98? Why wasn't this 100? Out of curiosity. I mean, not that it's necessarily worth 100.
I'm not sure anyone can reach 100.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's hard to be perfect.
I just want to bring to attention that this caliber of whiskey has been recognized in a fashion that has never been seen before for even a European whiskey. We are talking, this is better than any other rated whiskey from Europe.
Jack, I hate you right now.
Hey, we got you a tasting kit. Well, sorry. Well, one of our coworkers got you a tasting kit. But
Matt, you need this bottle. Trust me. If you liked what you tasted last night with Glendalough, and you like Sexton, and you like Bushmills in general, you will flip your shit over the 28-year. He says he knew he needed this whiskey in his life.
You can still find this whiskey out there. I haven't, it's beyond rare. Look, I have not been able to get a photograph of a bottle in real life. Gives you an idea of just how rare it is. But you can find it. You can find it. And look, this is just our first rare cask. This is just our first one.
Matt asked if this is in market yet. Matt, absolutely. It's 28 years been in market since I want to say mid-2020, right, Jack?
No. Later than that. That was that came out
Q4 or Q3?
Fall. No, it came out in the fall.
Is it in Texas, he wants to know?
Yes.
Because Matt's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
No, you have to remember Texas does follow that 4-tier system, which is...
Oh my God, fucking 4-tier system.
So it makes everything that just a little bit more fun, a little more complicated.
So, 8 whiskeys, a pint and a quarter.
Jack? Well. Hey, we're going into St. Patrick's Day. Well.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. The comments, the questions, the smart remarks, especially from you, Emily. I'm looking at you. Look at you, love. This was great fun. Join us next week as we're hanging in the house of Suntory with West Coast Brand Ambassador Jonathan Armstrong. And then the week after that, we're joined by my other Irish friend, Mr. Michael Egan, as we talk about the Kilbeggan Distilling Company.
Well, Sam,
Jack,
I'm just going to say this.
You want to lead us out, or you want me to lead us out?
And, well, tell you what, I'm going to do a little toast with you. So, here's to a long life and a merry one. Quick death and an easy one.
Good one.
Pretty girl and
good girl.
A Bushmills and another one.
Another one.
Sláinte.
I fucked that up. Let's try that again, shall we? Because I know this toast.
So here's to a long life and a merry one.
No. I know the toast. I'm waiting for you to say when you're ready.
Okay. So here's to a long
To
life,
a long
and a merry
life
one.
and a merry one. A quick death
and an easy
and
one.
an easy one. A
pretty
good girl or guy
and an honest one.
and an honest one. A
A
Bushmills
Bushmills and another
and
one.
another one. Slugs for more, ladies and gentlemen.
Cheers.
Jack, don't go anywhere. You and I will talk offline for a second. Cheers. And happy St. Patrick's Day, ladies and gentlemen.